Welcome to NJCAA Hot Hoops. Kenya Landers and Dan Olson. We co-host the show, and we are going to talk some JUCO women's basketball, Kenya, and it's getting down to the nitty-gritty.
Down to the nitty-gritty.
Some teams have completed playing their regular season.
Yeah.
Others, one, maybe two games left in various regions.
I feel like we just started this. Like, how is it already over?
Yeah, like we've been saying, like a couple of 3 weeks ago, like, wow, the season's getting close to being over,
Yeah.
and here we are, it's right there, so, but, we had great games last week.
Oh my gosh,
and
yeah.
some interesting turns of events, of course, as usual.
Mhm.
And, we've had some teams that, did pretty well, and then others that didn't,
Yeah.
so, let's talk about that. You can, start off the show. Let's
With
talk
the
about
hot
who's been hot and who's been not.
Yeah, well, one thing, that's still rolling. We did not have a shift in our number one team in the country this week. They took care of business against Northwest Kansas Tech and Seward. So they're still hot. Eastern Florida is rolling in, New Mexico. McLennan got some work in this week. Pearl River, Three Rivers, Dodge City, Eastern Arizona is getting back on track. So people are rolling. Chattanooga State's busted up into the top 25, so that's fun.
I don't know if they've ever been in it. Well, they've been in it. I think they were in it when Bart Walker used to work there.
That would make sense. Yeah.
But it's been a long time because Walters State has had that stranglehold on the entire state, and look, they've only got one loss, Chattanooga.
Yeah.
So that's good to see.
Yeah, that's good. Them getting rewards for their hard work.
Absolutely.
Casper, Eastern Georgia State. They're rolling. All these teams were 2-0 this week, and they were hot. Now for our not list, man, we had some painful losses this week. Collin County, they dropped off. Collin lost to McLennan. Again, yeah. Second time, yeah. Trinity Valley goes 1-1. Pensacola State, Temple, Chipola, after they were really making a big climb. Butler County, Angelina drops off, and Cochise. So those are our not so hot. Yeah, movers and shakers. So we got a big week coming up though, and so we'll go back and talk about some of the games in our rewind, and we'll get it going.
Yeah. So let's start it off with. I guess we could start it off with Southern Idaho.
Yeah.
They're number 16 this week.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat the unranked team Utah State Eastern, who's been and out of the top 25.
Yeah.
But they beat them by 15. Jamison Heaton, one of their solid guards, 5'10" guard for Southern Idaho. She had 22 points in that win. And of course, that cream always rises to the top, and Southern Idaho seems to always be there. Really quality team and a quality program.
Absolutely.
No surprise there that they're moving in that direction. Chipola had an up and down week though. They beat Pensacola by 5, which was a critical game for them because I believe they had lost to Pensacola earlier. And then they had been beating some people that kind of surprisingly had beaten Gulf Coast and Northwest.
Yeah.
Well, then they turn around and they get smashed by Gulf Coast by 50.
Yeah. Wasn't even close ever.
Yeah, I think they had one injury of one of their rotating guards that they had there for Chipola. But Aaliyah Bartholomew, among one of the better guards in all of junior college basketball, was a juggernaut that day. She had 36. She had 8 threes in that game, but she also had like 5 assists, so Gulf Coast falls in at number 2 this week. And this is going to get interesting this last week in the Pan Indo Conference. Okay. So Northwest Florida State, they dropped to 6. They'd been our number 1 for quite a while, and so, but they beat Tallahassee rather handily. Tallahassee's the bottom end of that Panhandle League. But Celia Rivera, their star forward, a really talented front court player,
Yeah.
had just a kind of a quiet 12-5 for Northwest Florida State as they get ready to get into the frying pan here coming up this week and finish out the regular season. So I was down in Florida last week and watched Miami-Dade play Division II Palm Beach State. And it was an up and down game, fast-paced game. There's a guard on Miami-Dade now that's the real deal. Her name is Shamir Quimby. Had 38 that day.
Yes.
Right? Turns around and has 33 the next day or the next game against Eastern Florida State. So she has really lit it up from an offensive standpoint and is one of the leading scorers in the nation.
Yeah.
So, hats off to Shamir Quimby and Miami-Dade for getting that win, going 1-1 for the week.
Yeah.
McLennan's number 8 this week, and they trip up Collin County, like we said, for the second time this year. It's no one standout player, I don't think, for McLennan.
Right.
Their best guard, Sinead Beverly, hurt her knee. She was like their go-to. But they're doing it by committee and they're getting it done, And as for Colin's got Wyatta Jennings, they got Mackenzie Buss. Those are their 2 star numbers makers for themselves, and they scored 34 of their 54 points. They've got a guard on their team, though, Kennedy Archibald, that's a gifted player, an athletic guard, and she's got to step it up. She's got to be in order for Colin to move ahead this rest of the year. Kennedy Archibald has to produce for them in order for them to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see, who else are we going to talk about? Hutch just rolled over Seward. Kiki Smith, who we've talked about before, I feel like one of the best freshmen in the country, had 24. When's somebody going to guard this kid at the 3-point line?
5 threes.
I know.
She's a shooter.
Yeah. Don't let her get looks.
Maybe she just gets a lot of moving around. A lot of moving around.
Exactly. But Trinity Valley. We talk a lot about Trinity Valley, but rightfully so. They're number 12 this week, okay? They got a couple of interesting players that have resurfaced that I have found out about. Kiera Sanderlin, who's a transfer from Rutgers and Houston and is at Trinity Valley, a Texas player, good guard. This kid's a quality player. She had 20 or so the other day in her opening game coming back. But then they reinstated Imani Jenkins, who had been on their roster last year and this year. This kid's a dynamite guard. She reminds me of a Kenya Landers of the Trinity Valley, historic numbers.
She must be a dog then.
Yeah. I mean, she is, because she stuck 36 on Coastal Bend. And I think they let her shoot it 8 or 10 times out there, and she made them. I don't remember hearing anybody hit 10 threes in a single game this year.
I mean, you know what? Not this year, but since you did bring me up, do you remember from Brazil, Diana Packard?
Oh, yeah.
Went to South Florida?
Yes, she did.
She made 12 threes in a game at the Valley.
She could stroke it. Yep.
She could stroke it from half court.
Yeah. I remember Diana well.
Woo! I miss her.
She didn't wow you with her athleticism, but man, that thing was in her hands. It was gone. It was in.
Gone.
Yep.
Woo, man.
I agree.
That's a blast from the past I pulled out.
Sure is. And let's not forget our Division II teams.
Mm-hmm.
there's two undefeated teams in Division II still. Rock Valley is 30-0, and they fall in at number 3 this week. Kirkwood, they're number 2. They're 27-2, but undefeated number 1 Johnson County 28-0. We're going to have Ben Conrad on in our hot seat here coming up, and he'll talk a little bit more about, what's cooking at Johnson County. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And he's been there a while, done a good job, and it's starting to heat up.
Yeah,
It's
they got one game left. Johnson County's got one game left.
Really?
Yeah, we head into the regional tournaments. Like, it's about to go down. It's about to go down.
I agree.
Yeah.
Listen, when we come back, let's talk about some upload. Let's talk about our games that we're going to have going on for the final week of the regular season, and we'll talk about some other stuff too when we come back from NJCAA Hot Hoops.
Intensity fuels these champion student athletes to greatness. Zurich Insurance is proud to be the official provider of student athlete insurance for the National Junior College Athletic Association. Throughout the highs, we cheer along to their screams of victory. Throughout the lows, we support them through their tears of defeat. Zurich Insurance, helping student athletes play the sport they love.
Back, NJCAA Hot Hoops, Kenya Landers and Dan Olson. We're going to talk some upload, Kenya. Let's see where we go with this last week of the regular season, and we've got one really, really, really important game.
Yeah,
and then a bunch of others that could kind of wind up in upsets. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think the marquee game of this coming week is going to be number 6 Northwest Florida State at number 2 Gulf Coast.
absolutely.
Now, that game will determine if Northwest wins it, they tie. If Gulf Coast wins,
for the conference championship,
for the Panhandle Championship.
Okay.
Gulf Coast wins, they're the first place team. That's it.
Okay.
But a lot of moving parts going on. It always winds up that way in that league, as I'm sure it does in some of these other spots.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that as we move on in the show today. But that would be a really impressive game to watch. I'd love to be there live if I could. Casper's number 17, and they're going to be hosting. They're going to be our tournament hosts, so to speak, in Casper, Wyoming for the national tournament. They're doing a quiet job of being 23-5 right now.
Yeah. Flying under the radar.
They got 2 games left, and they've only lost really they lost early to South Plains, who hasn't had a good season in South Plains regard.
Yeah. And
they lost to Western Nebraska early. But then, they righted the ship, which that's what Dwight Gennari does. He's a really good coach. He does a phenomenal job of just directing them, guiding them along the way, and bingo, 23-5 right now. So Trinity Valley falls at 12. Like we said, they're going to be playing unranked Kilgore, who had beaten Trinity Valley earlier in the year, by the way. So that could be a pivotal game too for, just keeping yourself on a good edge, you know. Odessa is going to be playing home against Howard. Howard, we really haven't talked about a lot this year, but you know what? They're over 500. anything can happen out there in that league, and you got to come to play. So we're going to see if Howard can work some John Ishii magic and
I'm sure they will.
go and take on Odessa. Another game in the Kansas Jayhawk, you got Cloud at home against Butler County.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these teams are like really similar in their win-loss record.
Yep.
So that's going to be a tight fight down to the end of who finds where they go seeding wise. But good players on both teams. And we'll see how that plays out. Snow in Utah has been a fairly solid team for most of the year. They're going to be playing at number 20 Salt Lake. Salt Lake's got to keep it moving on the forward direction, and I'm sure they'll be closing out their season as well. And then again, we're going to mention Odessa again. Odessa's playing at South Plains. That's always an interesting game. I mean,
Always.
South Plains been down.
Yeah.
But you got to come to play. They've got the players, the talent to win. So let's see who else we have. Coffeyville, they're going to take on number 1 Hutch. Coffeyville's got some players. Don't take them lightly, Hutch, because it could happen.
That's right.
28-0.
Yep.
Let's see, who else do we have? I think that's it for the Hutchinson's at Barton County.
Yes.
I almost overlooked that.
You did.
That could be an interesting game. That's a game that Hutch better be ready to play.
Yep.
That Barton County, tough place to play. Barton's pretty good now.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. And this is what's crazy about this. Remember a couple of weeks ago, so we had almost every game in the upcoming week, we had ranked teams against ranked teams, right?
Yeah.
And just so how it's fallen, this last week, we have some ranked teams that are playing against unranked teams, or that teams that are receiving votes. But all of these games are huge games because, like you said, it finishes your tone for your regular season. It puts you in a different spot than you're gonna have, in the bracket play for your regional tournament. It might get some people to buy. It might, so these teams that are not ranked are coming for something because they're in survival mode at this point. So they are trying, really, really trying to work hard to make some noise here at the end of the season.
The psychology of it is huge.
It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I would agree. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Look, when we come back, we're going to have Ben Conrad on. He's the head coach at Johnson County Community College, and he's number 1 in the country in Division II. And he's going to be on our hot seat when we come back with NJCAA Hot Hoops.
As the second largest intercollegiate athletic association in the country, the NJCAA serves not only a pivotal role in college athletics, but in higher education. The NJCAA Foundation aims to move the association forward through resources, grant programs, and other special initiatives. Your gift to the NJCAA Foundation will make a difference and create opportunities.
Welcome back to NJCAA Hot Hoops. Kenya Landers and Dan Olson. We've got Ben Conrad, head coach at Johnson County Community College. Ben, you're on the hot seat, and we're delighted to have you here, man.
I appreciate you guys having me. This is an awesome deal you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. And it seems to be that you're off to a pretty good start, I would say.
Yeah, I
28
think.
low.
Yeah, I don't know if we call it a start anymore. We're about one game away from being done, so we're about over.
Yeah.
So true. Hey, listen, you have done remarkable things there. I mean, if you look at your resume of the win-loss and et cetera, man, you're in a good place. You're number one in the country on the Division II poll, and like we said, you're 28-0. Tell us more about. It seems as if you are a JUCO guy through and through, and of course, we love that. Tell us a little bit more about your situation there at Johnson County and the tremendous success that you had so far there.
Well, it's a good spot. I mean, we're in a great location. I learned a long time ago, if you have some players that can help you win in your backyard, that makes these jobs a lot easier. And I'm one of the few people I think that can say, like, we can draw a 60-mile radius around our campus, and there's players. And I've been places where we didn't have that. And so you've got to go a lot further. You got to dig a lot deeper. Not that we don't, go all over the place here and dig real deep here, but it's an advantage to be in an area where there's some players, that you can win with just right in your backyard. So it's been a good spot. It's a great place to work. Obviously, I've been here 16 years. I don't know that I would have thought I would have been here this long when I came here, but I think, it's really, really a good place to work with good people. Our facilities are good. Junior college basketball in Kansas is very strong. I mean, everybody, values it. They put resources behind it. So it's been a great situation, and we've kind of found a niche, I think, over the years, in terms of recruiting and our players. And we've kind of been able to get it going. And I think that's the key for everybody, wherever they're at with their job, is just trying to find a niche of where you're going to get your players and who's going to be successful at your school. And we've been lucky. We've been able to do that and kind of sustain it for a pretty good amount of time.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
You've been really good.
Yeah. Coach, so just going back to just, like we said, you guys are 28-0, like just completely rolling at this point and putting yourselves in a very good position to make a run in the postseason. But before we go into your team per se, talk to us a little bit about, I mean, like you said, you've been there 16 years. So at this point, I mean, I know all the teams are different, but at this point, I know you guys have good resources. I know, like you said, you got recruiting in your backyard, but what has it been that's made you just really want to stay there and grind it out? Because, a lot of coaches, we're looking for, the next big job, right? Or the next, what's next. But you've been loyal, you've been dedicated, and obviously they've done the same thing with you. But why Johnson County? Why have you stayed there and stuck it out this long?
Yeah, they've been extremely loyal. They've really taken care of us. I think I'll be honest with you. When I was really young. I was 28. I was at Des Moines Area Community College, and I took a struggling Division III program into Division II at Upper Iowa University, and a lot of good people there. We had great kids, but we did not have what we needed to win there. And so I went there, and I think within a year, I was looking in the rearview mirror at DMAC behind me thinking, man, I don't know that I should have left that job. I don't know if this was the right move.
Yeah.
And when you're 28, I think when you're 28, maybe you don't know the questions to ask. You don't know a lot when you're 28, to be honest with you. At least I didn't. And so I think being here, I think what I've learned is the grass is not always greener on the other side. And I'm very, very careful when you talk about opportunities to move. I've just been very, very just careful, because I know I have something really good here. And I think I've always said if and when we were to leave here, I don't want to be looking in the rearview mirror at all. at my old job, thinking, gosh, I should still be there. And so that's a big reason. But then the number one reason is just family. My kids, we've raised our kids here. I got a senior, a sophomore, and an eighth grader. And so it's just been a great place to raise them. There's really no better place, honestly, to raise kids as far as opportunities. I think where I was raised in central Iowa is a pretty amazing place to raise kids too. But this, as far as opportunity, what our kids have here at their disposal is pretty amazing. And like I said, just the school's been incredibly loyal, and it's just been a great fit for a long, long time.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very interesting, once we get, in our groove and we get a little bit more mature and we we have our families, our priorities are different. And so that's much respect to you for that. So, okay, let's dig into your team. So, like we said, 28-0, you guys are rolling. How are you keeping these kids going? Because at this point, coach, we're good. Like, we don't still have to practice hard. I mean, I'm not saying that about your team, but you know how kids can get. So how are you motivated? How are you keeping them on that walking that line and keeping their eyes on the prize?
It's as I know you've been there before. It's really hard. It's extremely difficult. Coaching on an undefeated team is kind of two things at the same time. We're not complaining about being undefeated.
Right.
It's a great thing. We like it. We embrace it. But you're right. You do have a little phases where I think the kids start to feel like they start to lose track of what got us here. Mm-hmm. And so we just really try to really preach just that winning every single day and talk about that process and talk about how we're and even when we're not undefeated, we talk a lot about we're not getting caught up on our win and loss record. We don't really talk much about it. We're just talking about just that day being really good in the weight room, really good in film, really good in practice, and just winning that day. And I think that helps us a little bit just stay on task. But you're right, it's really difficult. And I think we've had a few teams that have made a run at doing this. And I feel like every one of those teams has had a little phase sometime in maybe early February, late January, where I noticed they're coming in with a little different. There's something I don't like about when we come into practice and just a little relaxed, a little casual. And so we just have to kind of have to reset the mindset occasionally and make sure that we don't get there. But it is very difficult. I think most teams need to get beat at some point. I think it's the best way to learn. Luckily, I think this year's group has learned a lot of lessons and without maybe taking that L. Made some mistakes.
I would much rather learn the lessons without taking the L.
100%. And we've talked about that. Like we've had some games where we didn't play great and we made some mistakes that might have gotten us beat. And we just found a way to win. And so, but you're right. It is a challenge. And if I had the best answer, I might be able to bottle it and make some money. But,
right? Yeah.
We're just, we just stay in the process and the daily idea of we're going to win this day.
Yeah. I love that, winning the day, taking it one day at a time. That's the way to do it for these short-term memory and individuals that you guys are working with on a daily basis. So talk about your team, like talk about us, who's carrying you guys. I know you guys have a lot of good balance, but just talk to us about some of your key players and y'all's team personality.
Yeah, it's been interesting. We lost 5 starters off last year's group that went to the Elite Eight, 6 of our top 8. And they were really good. I mean, we had some really good players in that sophomore class last year. So this is a very young team. Again, I mean, we lost 80, I think it was like 83% of our scoring off last year's group. And obviously it's normal to lose a lot at the junior college level. There's high turnover and you're bringing new groups in, but this is a little more than normal. It's the youngest team. It's the youngest team I've had here. And so it was, on paper, I think it was a little bit of a year where, we were thinking we're probably going to maybe take a little bit of a step back, and we really have kind of picked up where we left off. This group has just done a great job of guarding. We've done a really good job of buying into what we do on the glass with the way we rebound the ball. Our sophomores have really stepped up. We've only got 3 returners, and they've all made huge jumps from year 1 to year 2. I would say Jazzy Kling has probably made the biggest jump. in terms of just what she gave us last year versus what she gave us this year. I mean, she's she's a legitimate, I think, All-American candidate at this point. I think she's got about a 12 or 13 doubles already. Sage Gramsis, shooting guard, one of the better shooters that I've ever coached, has gone from just a role kid off the bench to I think she's our leading scorer, and she's going to make 100. I think she's made 105 threes already. Really shooting it, can play some point. Grace Lynch is playing a little out of position this year, and it just speaks to her character. She was a stretch four for us last year, and that's her strongest position. She's moved over to the two, just out of necessity, and just done it without complaining, and given us some big moments this year. So I just think those sophomores have really stepped it up, and then we've had some freshmen that came in and were just figured it out maybe a little quicker than what sometimes they figure it out. And it's all kind of came together, and we've been really good when we've needed to be really good. Yeah. I think that's kind of the key sometimes, is when we've needed to be really good, we've been that. It's been a very pleasant surprise to work through this last couple months.
Awesome. So what do you guys got next? I'm sorry, Dan.
That's okay. Kenya, I've watched their practices over the last few years, as well as games. Ben does a really good job at breaking stuff down, individual, type stuff, and piecing it together in a simplified format. And kids just get the basics from them, and then they build upon it. Of all the practices I've gone to, Ben, I mean, you really do a nice job at putting that all together in kind of an easy way to understand it, and holding them accountable too, and the other thing that we've been touching on here, the psychology of a basketball coach. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like a 90% out of your 100% of your day. The 10% is the teach, the 90% is the psyche,
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. There's no doubt about that. You've got to have a good pulse on what needs to be said, sometimes what doesn't need to be said, what you need to focus on. And I appreciate you saying that, Dan. We do try to keep it fairly simple. I think the game sometimes gets overcomplicated, and I think it's a pretty simple game at the end of the day, and we try to keep it as simple as we can.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kenya.
So what do you guys have coming up next? I'm sorry. I know you guys, what do you have? Just a couple more games before we...
Yeah, we just have one. We play tomorrow, and then we'll get a bye in the first round next week, and then we'll be in our region semi and that weekend, and we will actually host that.
Nice.
I think the 8th and the 9th, I think, is the dates, and so that's kind of our final four for our region, and then the winner of that gets an automatic bid to the national tournament. We actually this year have at-large bids for the first time. We're the only level of college basketball for years that doesn't have an at-large. So Coach, I want you to imagine this. Imagine you got to go into a region tournament, back when you were at Trinity Valley, and imagine you've got 4 of the top 7 teams in the country in your region, and only one gets to go to Salina. You know what I mean? Imagine that. That's what we've been doing.
I did imagine that when I played.
Yeah.
It was us, Tyler, Kilgore, and Bland all were and we all went, and we got upset by Tyler, and we didn't go to the national tournament myself.
So back then they didn't have an at-large.
Even when I was coaching at Trinity Valley in 2005, there was no at-large bids then.
Wow. So, when did they get at large then at the Division I level? Do you remember?
I don't remember when, but I
think it's been in the last 5 years.
Yeah, because it's something new for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's been great.
Yeah.
I mean, I applaud that.
Yeah, we had a little stretch there where we had 4 of the top 7 or 8, and only one of us went, and we were looking around at all the levels of college basketball. And we were the only one that we could find that didn't have, you could go undefeated, and if you got beat, in the region tournament, you were done. Yeah. And so we've got some at large now. So you've got a chance to get in. if you don't win your region tournament, which I think it makes the national tournament a better tournament.
Better, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, because back in the day, you would have you would have Trinity Valley if they got upset sitting at home. You would have Gulf Coast. I mean, they never got upset, but if they happened to, or
Yeah.
Central Arizona back in the day. I remember one year they got upset, and it's just like, how do you even? I mean, is the national tournament even the national tournament without you guys there? Like it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
The parity has gotten more and more refined.
Yeah.
And by adding these at-large games just throws another
Mhm.
kind of a twist to this whole thing, really makes it better for all of basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, listen, coach, I mean, keep it rolling, man. And I mean, we're anxious to see how this all unfolds. And we're pulling for you. And of course, we've been monitoring you, how you've done here from the early stages of your season. And man, it goes by so quick. Kenya and I've been sitting here talking about that over the last couple of weeks. It's
Yeah.
like season's almost going to be over with, and
Yeah.
so we wish you the best of luck, as you move on and forward and try to gain that second national championship.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Like I said, any exposure and light that gets shined on our level of basketball is awesome. As you guys know, it's great basketball. There's great coaches.
Absolutely.
It's a great level to be at.
Well said. Well said. Kenya, anything else?
Coach, just thank you for what you're doing for the game and your dedication to women's basketball. You're giving a lot of young ladies an opportunity to do big things with their life, and we just definitely appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Ben Conrad, Johnson County Community College. Thanks for being on today, Ben.
Yep.
Intensity fuels these champion student athletes to greatness. Zurich Insurance is proud to be the official provider of student athlete insurance for the National Junior College Athletic Association. Throughout the highs, we cheer along to their screams of victory. Throughout the lows, we support them through their tears of defeat. Zurich Insurance, helping student athletes play the sport they love.
NJCAA Hot Hoops. Kenya, our closing segment of the day. Anything in the mailbag that we need to talk about?
Absolutely. We have a really good question in our mailbag today, and it's interesting because it's something that we've discussed on the show today. So our question is, let's see. Okay. So last week we talked a little bit of we made mention of, if this team doesn't win their regional tournament, they could get, a bid to the national tournament. So the question is, last week I've heard mentions of receiving at-large bids for the national tournament. How does this process work?
So I'm not specifically aware of how it works, but it's a good thing that it does
It's a great thing.
apply, because prior to maybe, I think about 5 years ago, we didn't have these at-large bids,
Right.
and there were good teams that didn't make it, and it would
Yeah.
be at home. And I'm sure that happened to you before.
Yeah.
I think you said on one
As
occasion,
a player and a coach.
and that's painful,
Mhm.
because you do all this hard work, you want to have something to show for it. And you know what? It's not where you start, it's where you finish.
Mhm.
And but when the NJCAA implemented these at-large
Yeah,
bids, I believe there are 8 of them.
yeah,
That really added to the the competition level went up.
yeah, yeah. So what do we know? We do know that there's 8 at-large bids. We do know that they have a committee of people that are keeping up with the teams all year. And then people on the committee kind of make their case as to why a certain team deserves the at-large bid. Example would be if Hutch gets upset in their regional tournament. Well, obviously we know they're going to get an at-large bid because they've
Correct.
been ranked #1 in the country for how, so
Right.
and this really does a good job of, just like you said, maintaining the competition and the level of play at the national tournament. So the at-large bid process it's great.
Yeah.
Really good
Um,
for the game.
and I remember in years past, it would be a one and done sort of a format where,
Hmm.
you go to Salina, Kansas, you lose, you're done, you know.
Yeah.
And then other years, I think it's been double elimination,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah,
and that's
which
a
I do
long,
like that. I do like that. It
yeah,
gives teams a chance to, if you're gonna do it in a tournament format, right? Like we're not doing, rounds, so we're doing it in a tournament format. So why not do double elimination?
yeah,
Makes it worth, get your bang for your buck, right?
yeah, absolutely. Um, Now look, we could go through like probably every region,
Yeah.
but I'm going to touch on a few regions that have some good teams that could be um, one of those at large if
Mm,
someone gets beat, let's say,
right.
Now we talked about Casper here a little bit ago, who's hosting the tournament
Hmm.
out in Wyoming. But there's a couple other teams within their region that are pretty good. Northeastern Colorado's 26-3 right now. And then you got Western Nebraska, they're 22-6. So there's a couple other teams that could upset the whole cart of how this
Yeah.
works,
Yeah.
in Region 9. Um, we talked about Chattanooga State.
Hmm.
Chattanooga State being a one-loss team, haven't been through it before, or if they have, it's been a long time. And you know what? Walter State's been there every year. They know how it works. And there's that part of it too that says, hey, we're seasoned at this. We know what to do.
Right.
And so that could happen. But you've got an interesting scenario in the Panhandle Conference now. You've got Northwest Florida State, you've got Gulf Coast. They're going to play against each other. Who's going to win that game? You got Chipola on the outside, Pensacola. They're all 4 of those teams are ranked nationally. Okay. Then you got Eastern Florida State over there on the east side of Florida. They're among the nation's best. So you got some good teams in Florida, and I don't know how. I think they only take 3.
Yeah.
So how's that going to work out? So
Yeah.
um, the same can be said for Texas. You got 2
And
regions in
Kansas. Yeah.
Texas,
Yeah.
but you got a lot of good teams.
Hmm.
And so um, you got Clarendon 20-7, and they could be a sleeper team out of this whole thing in Region 5. And then you've got New Mexico, you got Odessa, um, Temple, McLennan, Collin. Those are 5 good teams, 6 good
Absolutely.
teams.
Absolutely.
So, wow, it's going to be interesting how this unfolds,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to see how it plays out. And I'm certain that these games are going to come down to the end.
Yes.
So
It's gonna be very, very interesting.
so we'll touch base more on this in next week's show, I think, where we can
Yeah.
have a better grasp on who's going to be in and who's not, where it's going to all wind up. And those region directors, they got to be up there battling for their teams within their region,
Yeah.
for those that feel that warrant being at the national tournament too. You know,
Yes.
so
So end of the season this week, conference and regional tournaments next week. And then
yeah,
we
really
have
through
a
the
week
next
off.
2 weeks for that
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Before we hit the end of the month of March into Wyoming.
Yeah.
So it kind of drags out, but they have like a week or so. I think you would probably remember that. You get done playing, then you have like a little time, and you have your region, then you have a little more time. You know, it's not like a quick hit, you know, and you're
No,
gone.
it's not. It's not.
So it
But it is
drags out
kind
a
of
little bit.
good. Yeah, you can kind of throw some more things in the tool belt if you're still playing and kind of recover from some injuries while,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah,
keeping your team sharpening up some things. So it's a good thing. I'm
Yeah.
ready to see it all shake out.
me too. What else you got? Anything else?
No, what a great show. I really enjoyed having Coach on. The Division II, talking about that league, and it's been a great show. It's been a great season so far. So I'm just proud of all the teams, man. They are all working so hard and just giving it everything they got. It's been so fun watching the uphill, downhill, peaks and valleys of all the teams, the
Absolutely.
bounce backs that are happening. So this is what it's all about, learning life lessons through basketball, right?
There you go. Well said.
Yeah.
Well
All
said.
right. Well, thanks guys for tuning in. Kenya and Dan here, and we are signing off.